After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, there was a political vacuum across the Middle East, across the areas that the Ottomans ruled. And from amongst the places where there was a political vacuum was Iraq. So Iraq became under the control of the British. This led to a revolt, the Thawrat al-Ashreen, the 1920 revolution. And this revolution was unique because it was led by the Hawza. It was led by the scholars. And from amongst the greatest of those scholars who was in the forefront of this revolution was Mirza Taqi Shirazi.
Ayatollah Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Shirazi viewed resistance as a religious duty. He found it an obligation upon his followers, but as well as the Muslim, the everyday non-Shia, that it is your duty to resist any form of dhulm and oppression. And he viewed the hegemonic colonial expansionism that is happening in Iraq as a type of threat to not only Iraq's independence, but the Islamic identity.
He believed silence itself would be a form of injustice, a form of dhulm. Permitting resistance was not about power, it was about conscience.
وعلمت الشعوب، علمت شعب فلسطين والشعوب العربية عموما لمقاومة أي عدو محتل.
After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, there was a political vacuum across the Middle East, across the areas that the Ottomans ruled. And from amongst the places where there was a political vacuum was Iraq. The British, they removed the Ottomans and they established a British mandate in Iraq. So Iraq became under the control of the British. And this led to a revolt, the Thawrat al-Ashreen, the 1920 revolution. And this revolution was unique because it was led by the Hawza. It was led by the scholars. And from amongst the greatest of those scholars who was in the forefront of this revolution was Mirza Taqi Shirazi, who was the head of the Hawza at the time. He and along with other scholars of the Hawza, they motivated the masses to come out and protest against the British Empire, against the oppressive rule of the British Empire. And the people, they came out and they revolted against the British. And as a result of that movement, the British, they lost power in Iraq. And this led to the establishment of the monarchy in Iraq and a state that was ruled by the people of Iraq.
For nearly 400 years, Iraq had been part of the Ottoman Empire. That empire collapsed in 1918. Suddenly, Iraq was left without a clear future. British forces moved in quickly. Basra had fallen in 1914, Baghdad in 1917, and Mosul by 1918. And at first, many of the Iraqis believed that this occupation was temporary. It was not going to last for long because they had been promised independence. In 1920, Britain made its intentions clear. Iraq was placed under British control without the consent of its people, without the consent of the Iraqis.
The Iraqi average citizen, in addition to the clerical leagues and the politicians, those who were subject to Ottoman rule, being promised an independence that they've been hoping for many years, saw a type of betrayal when the British mandate took place. They were under the impression that they would finally receive their own rights, maybe their own Islamic rule, and be self-governing as opposed to being centralized by another empire. Additionally, heavy taxation took place. And this was a type of event that was seen before in Iran prior, that سماحة آية الله العظمى السيد محمد حسن الشيرازي صاحب ثورة التومباك famously known as the initiator of the tobacco fatwa movement, whereby he banned tobacco in the 19th century, which was an abnormal type of fatwa because it was not backed by necessarily a jurisprudential reason, more so than it was for the betterment of society because of the British hegemony that controlled the economics of Iran at that time. As a result, in the period of the Qajar era and dynasty, they saw that one fatwa could lead to the complete undermining of an empire, which then gave the demands and the rights of those who are calling for their huquq, their rights, their respect, spotlight, and eventually granted them that amnesty and that independence. And so in this context, heavy taxation really bothered them, in addition to the fact that they were sort of promised during World War I's propaganda era a degree of independence. These are the Iraqi tribes, the religious clerical class, and just the business people and the business folk in Iraq. Ultimately, this also undermined the religious sense of culture because more interest that was Western was found. You would see the normalization of drinking. You would see, for example, people that took businesses that may not be Islamic businesses and went through with them all throughout Baghdad and elsewhere, and trade, undermining the actual citizen of Iraq, prioritizing foreigners. People would take advantage of the land and farming and not really give the everyday individual their share, and rather they would see all their hard work go back to a country that simply is taking advantage of their own. So all of this contributed to what would eventually be, this is the advent of the revolutionary fatwa by Samahat Ayatollah al-Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Shirazi. Ayatollah al-Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Shirazi viewed resistance as a religious duty. He found it an obligation upon his followers, but as well as the Muslim, the everyday non-Shia, that it is your duty to resist any form of dhulm and oppression. And he viewed the hegemonic colonial expansionism that is happening in Iraq as a type of threat to not only Iraq's independence, but the Islamic identity. Of course, the wave of secularism already existed. Communism was very popular, but it was becoming more popularized. And so Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Shirazi viewed that being humiliated economically, in addition and in tangent to being undermined religiously, led to the necessity of a fatwa that basically went along the lines of this. It is the duty and right of every single Muslim to demand their rights. It is within their obligation religiously to demand their rights. Rights here is a broad term which includes inside it and encompasses economic rights, sovereign rights, their independence to practice their religion, the democratic majority of we all share the same view. Why are we forced to conform and provide taxes to a company, to a country, to organizations that then use our hard-earned work to promote values that are not consistent with the teachings of Islam? And so he saw this as a threat to the very existence. This was also a threat to the Islamic seminaries of both Samarra and Najaf being the primary hawzat at that time period. Why? Because he saw commanders and officers going into the seminary and meeting with many of the teachers, many of the scholars, and asking them questions, not for purposes of knowing what the view of Islam is like from a jurisprudential, legal, theological point of view, but to ask so that they could take advantage of them. So many of them would say, hey, if you stop teaching, if you leave, what's the impression of politics and Islam? Do they have connection? They would take these answers and they would relay them to their seniors and their superiors. And this was information they just wanted in order to best take control. I even remember the famous incident where a Sayyid Sahib al-Urwa, Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Yazdi, Quddisa Sirruhu al-Sharif, he was told to leave Najaf. He says, if you want me to leave Najaf, then I would have to die first before I leave this house. They said, we'll give you amnesty because you are the head of the seminary. And so we won't hurt you, so leave. The rest are going to be blockaded inside so we can control the house. He said, no, if you want me to leave, you have to kill me first. And so these were the circumstances you dealt at the time.
At the time, he was the highest religious authority in the holy city of Karbala. He believed that foreign rule over a Muslim land was a moral injustice. And at first, he did not call for resistance. In 1919, he asked for something simple, which was that Iraqis be allowed to choose their own government. But those requests were not adhered to, they were ignored. And at that point, he believed silence itself would be a form of injustice, a form of dhulm. So permitting resistance was not about power. It was about conscience.
إذا كان هناك عدو إرهابي مسلح يريد أن يهجم على دارك ويستبيح حرماتك، ما هو موقفك؟ هل هو الموقف الاستسلام أو موقف المواجهة؟ وهناك نصوص عديدة الفقهاء يذكروها ويأكدون عليها، ومنها قول الله تعالى: ولن يجعل الله للكافرين على المؤمنين سبيلا. كافر جاي إلى بلدي محتل مسلح يريد أن يسفك الدماء ويريد أن يحقق مصالحه في بلدي، بأي مناسبة واحد يسكت؟ بأي مناسبة واحد يستسلم ويذل نفسه ويهين كرامته؟ العدو الجاي إلى البلد مثل السارق المسلح اللي يحتل بيتك ويحتل عائلتك ويحتل كل ممتلكاتك. المواجهة الحل العقلائي والشرعي. في الحديث: أفضل الجهاد كلمة حق عند سلطان جائر. وهاي القضية لا تحكمها موازين القوة، وإنما هي موازين الإرادة الصلبة، لأن الإنسان اللي يريد يقاوم الحاكم الجائر ما عنده قوة. الحاكم الجائر بيده القوة. يعني نفس الموازين اللي حكمت نهضة الإمام الحسين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. بالقوة المادية الإمام صلوات الله عنده 72 واحد أصحابه و18 واحد أهل بيته. يعني في موازين القوة المادية العدو 1000 مرة أقوى من الإمام الحسين صلوات الله وسلامه، لكن الإمام صلوات الله وسلامه عليه فات في القضية وفجر نهضته، وأن أدت إلى استشهاده واستشهاد كل أصحابه. هاي الدفاع عن الكرامة والدفاع عن المبادئ ودفاع عن الوطن.
When a religious scholar, when a religious jurist gives a fatwa, we see that people act upon it. We see this in the 1920 revolution where Mirza Taqi Shirazi, he gave a fatwa that if the British do not leave and hand over power to the people of Iraq, then this will permit the people, this will give people the fatwa and the permissibility to fight against them.
The main objective was to demand independence and sovereignty and bring it back to the everyday practicing, believing Muslim Iraqi. In this context, what also happened as a result, secondary to that, was it mobilized what would be distant tribes in Iraq who never connected because of faith. You had Shia that rose and resisted. They would boycott, they would protest, and in times of clash, they would literally be confrontational, only as self-defense. But as well as the Sunni tribes additionally, so the Anbar region, the north of Baghdad regions from Mosul, these are primarily non-Shia. What this did was, you found that you don't need to be Sunni or Shi'i to want independence as a country and sovereignty from a nation that's undermining you and taking advantage and stealing from your resources and so on and so forth. So the fatwa mobilized what would be non-brotherly members of the same region under one cause. And it allowed them to resist a common enemy and a common threat. So the Shaykh acted in his fatwa as a father figure to all of Iraqis. And that's why everyone united under his jihad kifai fatwa.
When Mirza Shirazi Ridwanullahi alayhi issued his fatwa in 1920, everything changed. In places like Rumaitha, Diwaniyah, Simawa, tribes rose almost at once. Even the British officials there admitted that his authority was unmatched. His authority was none like other. He had full control, full authority, and people listened and obeyed. His words carried more weight than any tribal leader. The fatwa did not just inspire resistance, it unified it. It unified all the tribes, all the leaders of the tribes to be unified in accomplishing what the Sayyid's fatwa had ordered.
Our ulama, when they give fatwas, you see that everyone answers, not only the Shi'as. You see the Sunnis and the Shi'as, they all respond to these fatwas. We saw this in 2014 where many Sunnis, they were also mobilized and they stood against Daesh, they stood against ISIS. And also in 1920 when Mirza Muhammad Taqi issued a fatwa, you see that the Sunni tribes in Iraq and others, they also came to answer. Why? Because the fatwa that came from the leadership, from the scholars, was not for a particular sect or particular group of people. This was for the liberty and the dignity of everyone that is living in that country. So therefore, everyone answered that fatwa.
His fatwa pretty much united all scholars. He brought them all together because it was more to do not with politics, but with independence, with identity, with, as we say, al-hawiyya shi'iyya. And this united Sunnis, and this united Jews, interestingly, Christians, Sabians, Shia, Kurds, they all came together. Why? Because the language that was being used was, you demand adl, justice. You have to resist dhulum, injustice. You have to ask for al-hurriyya, freedom. In such an atmosphere, this is not but something people ordinarily want. And so this is the impact and the effect of that fatwa, unifying maraji' and even unifying different various groups of people.
The Marja'iyya made a clear decision. They spoke about Iraq. They did not speak about the Shi'as. They did not speak only for the Sunnis or the other schools of thought. They spoke about Iraq, not about any sect, not about any faith. Shia and Sunni tribes responded together. Well, Sunni leaders like Sheikh Dhari al-Mahmoud, prominent individual at that time, a prominent leader of a tribe at that time, stood alongside his Shia brethren, the Shia community. The message was simple. This struggle was not about theology. It was about dignity, and it was about not being under foreign occupation.
الإمام الشيرازي كان يمارس حالة أبوة للمجتمع، للجمهور. يعني كان قائد مقبول، فقيه جامع للشرائط، وعادل، ورع، تقي. ماكو إشكالية على أسلوبه، على ممارساته، على تصرفه في الأموال، على تصرفه في الدماء. كان رجل وضع كل الشعب ثقته فيه، فاحترم كل القيادات حتى التي خالفته في العقيدة والمذهب. يعني القيادات السنية في العراق كلها تقريبا كلها تعاونت مع قيادة الثورة، وقيادات الشيعة على الإطلاق كلهم بالإجماع كانوا مع الإمام الشيرازي. بهذا الأسلوب الإنساني، الأسلوب المداراتي في قيادة الآخرين، تمكن من توحيد كلمة الشعب ووحدة الشعب، وتحركه خلف هذه القيادة هيأته لتفجير ثورة تاريخية كبرى ضد الاستعمار.
Of course, the role of Najaf al-Ashraf and Karbala al-Muqaddasa was paramount when it came to supporting such a movement and revolution. It fueled the movement with a type of spiritual backing. In addition to the logistical resources that were there, ulama and many speakers and reciters would intertwine every story of the past regarding resistance, Karbala, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and use Najaf al-Ashraf and Karbala al-Muqaddasa as spiritual backing in this regard. It motivated, it fueled them, it brought people together, it mobilized them. We are a group that we've been persecuted. I remember one of the famous titles was Al-Mawtu lana aada wa karamatuna min Allah shahada. Martyrdom for us is an honor, death for us is a norm. And in this circumstance, these two cities were very influential in not only putting forth resources and arms and men and actual confrontational resistance, but as well as giving the morality and spirituality backing that they definitely needed. And that was a huge boost, because you found the resistance wasn't necessarily guns and guns. It was shovels, it was sticks, it may have been like pieces of scrap metal, and farmers who came forth fighting heavily trained, professionally trained, armed soldiers. But the shocking factor was how they managed to overpower them with such meek and weak resources is because of this kind of pride that they have, which the two cities of Najaf and Karbala played a significant role in fueling spiritually and morally as well.
The holy city of Najaf and the holy city of Karbala were the heart of the 1920 revolution. They were not only spiritual centers, they were places of coordination and decision making. Meetings were held in the homes of senior scholars, and messages were sent to tribes from those two holy cities. The British officials themselves described Najaf as the brain of the uprising, and because of the city's sanctity, Britain hesitated to attack them directly. That gave the revolution room to operate, room for maneuver.
When the religious fatwa came out of the Hawza to rebel against the British rule, the British, they were not ready, they were not prepared, and they never thought that a scholar and the scholarship, that they live such humble lives, are going to be so influential that they are able to kick out an empire or kick out an army that is so powerful that armies cannot withstand, but one fatwa is able to kick them out. This is something that they never thought would happen. This is something that they never imagined. But this shows you the power of religion and the power of the religious seminary and the Shi'i religious seminary in the lives of the Shi'as. Whenever the scholars, they give a religious fatwa, you see the Shi'as, they all stand together and they answer that. And the greatest example of that was the 1920 revolution in Iraq.
Of course, the British reacted to the clerical leadership in a very nasty response. They mass murdered many of the scholars and many of the members who resisted. They did heavy surveillance on the ordinary scholar. They very much pressured the Hawza, and they actually blockaded Najaf in 1920, especially near the time of the death of Ayatollah Sheikh Mirza Taqi Shirazi. They blockaded the Hawza, and so there were heavy curfews, there was a lot of kidnapping and imprisoning and torturing. They reacted immensely and intensely. But when you're fueled with the spirit of resistance, of the love of Ahlul Bayt and the need to sacrifice, that overwhelmed them. So much so that eventually they couldn't continue with their initial plans of taking over rule and making Iraq part of sort of the British Empire and the British Mandate.
Tribal areas were bombarded, they were heavily attacked, and in some cases aerial bombing was used. But politically, the British learned a very important lesson. It was a crucial lesson learned by the British. And that was that Iraq could not be ruled without the consent of its religious leadership. By not obeying or by not listening to the religious authority, the religious leadership, no one is able to take control of Iraq or rule Iraq.
الاستعمار البريطاني استعمل حتى الأسلحة المحرمة في ثورة العشرين، وضحايانا يعني شهدائنا في العراق حوالي 200 ألف شهيد. 200 ألف شهيد من شعب تعداده 3 أو 4 ملايين، والذين زادوا في تعداده قالوا 5 ملايين. يعني شعب العراق ما كان أكثر من 5 ملايين بل أقل. 200 ألف شهيد أعطى، بس حرر نفسه. إذا ما يحرر نفسه كان يبقى عبد ويعني مصادرة كرامته وحقوقه إلى هذا اليوم.
Ayatollah Mirza Shirazi's death in August 1920, merely months after the revolution had kicked off. It was during the height of the revolution. Of course, the death of a prominent scholar, the death of a prominent alim, in the status and the caliber of Ayatollah Mirza Shirazi was a heavy blow, not only for the revolution, but also for Iraq, for the Shia, for all the other sects, for the holy city of Najaf, for the holy city of Karbala. Of course, he had been the moral center of the movement.
Naturally, the death of any leader of a great movement, let alone a marja' ad-din, can create a type of vacuum and strike to your morale. This is normal human behavior, but many saw him as the spiritual imam of this resistance. So when they lose that type of leadership, it could really hit at the morale of the movement and the people, and even the non-Shia found that the man that initiated this is no longer there, which created a rift. It actually did. People were shocked, people were afraid. Other ulama tried to fill in that role as a reference point to what can be done, what is allowed to do, how can, because when you issue such a fatwa, you need to follow it up quickly with what you're allowed to do, how far you can go, resistance, is it allowed to initiate conflict, or are you only allowed to act in defensive? What about offensive? What about defensive? These need scholars to provide references and give legal jurisprudential justification and permissibility for. So many tried to step in, but there still remained a vacuum as far as the leader of a movement. A leader is very important, it's very significant. This then would lead to the discussion of, okay, how about a constitution? Let there be a democratic movement, let there be a person chosen by the people, and when the person is made clear to us, let us then oversee how the constitution is written. This discussion of the mashruta was quite contentious between ulama that believed a scholar's role can be political to the fullest degree, al-wilaya al-mutlaqa, or the role of the scholar is rather limited only to areas concerning fiscal policy and the rights of those who are being undermined, like children and orphans, al-umur al-hisbiyya. And this ultimately is the discussion of how far does the guardianship of a faqih go. The likes such as Sheikh Sahib al-Kifaya, Sheikh al-Naini, believe no, the wilaya of the faqih has its place, even in governance, even when it comes to calling the shots economically, socio-politically, and so forth. Others like Sahib al-Urwa, Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Yazdi, believed otherwise. So this was an attempt to try to, replace or give a solution to the vacuum that was made after the death of Ayatollah al-Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Shirazi. The revolution led to the recognition and acknowledgement that foreign powers cannot control such people because they will resist. They have a will, and ultimately they have fuel from their heritage of resistance. This is a very resistance-minded type of people, and so fighting them is not going to be easy. You have to really go at them. But when you have motivation and morale and faith in the stories of Karbala, and you have ulama, and you have scholars that are backing you, and you have the union and unity of your fellow tribesmen and folk and brothers and sisters, that's not going to be possible. And so after the hegemony, they then, with the events of the mapping out and layout of the region, they decided to disperse, divide and conquer. The Kurds in one area, the Shia in another area, and the Sunnis in their own place. This would then allow them to have a better control if they're divided in that segment. And then this would eventually lead to the installation of Faisal I, who then was pretty much, one can argue, a puppet to the British imperial interest. Because give them what they want, if not at least in the image that they like, so long as they're happy that they can see, hey, we've been satisfied. We have a member from our own. Even though he came as an outsider to the Iraqi people, it was sufficient for them. But then they began to deport ulama because they may not have had Iraqi roots. So ironically enough, many of these who are ruling class don't have Iraqi roots themselves. So Sheikh al-Na'ini was deported, Sayyid Abul Hasan al-Asfahani was deported, and though they were taken back to Iran and Qom. And this was the result of noticing that you can't fight them one-on-one, so you have to divide and rule. Ultimately, the lesson behind all this is when lovers of Ahlul Bayt are united and under one cause, they are unstoppable.
Mirza Shirazi Ridwanullahi alayhi did not seek power, and this is the gist of the idea behind the Marji'iyya and the power of the Marji'iyya, that they do not seek power, they are not after political positions. He sought justice. So anywhere the Marji'iyya would see that injustice is taking place in any of its form, they have to speak out. It is their moral and religious duty.
ثورة العشرين ثورة عظيمة تاريخية مشرقة، وعلمت الشعوب، علمت شعب فلسطين والشعوب العربية عموما لمقاومة أي عدو محتل، أي عدو مسلح اللي يريد بالقوة يفرض نفسه على الشعب بحالة من الاستبداد والدكتاتورية ومصادرة كرامة الناس.
Alhamdulillah, we are blessed with a marji'iyya, and the marji'iyya is not there just to tell us this is halal and this is haram. The Hawza gives the Shi'as the direction in which they live their lives. Yes, we don't do taqleed when it comes to aqeedah, but the marji'iyya and the Hawza in the Shi'i world is much more influential than just a system that tells you this is halal and this is haram and do this and do that. No, the Marji'iyya and the Hawza actually inspires people to make a change in their life. Whenever there's wrong, whenever there's oppression, whenever there's tyranny, you always see from the first to speak out are the clerics in the Hawza, the scholars in the Hawza. And this is why within the Shi'i school of thought, many of our ulama, many of our scholars are actually shaheed. They're actually martyrs. Why? Because they gave their life in the way of liberating people. They gave their life in the way of bringing dignity and freedom to people. And this is why the Shi'i scholarship is very influential. And you might even see that they are more influential than the Sunni scholarship. In the Sunni world, you see that those in the government, the king or the prince or the rulers or the emirs, they are the ones that tell the scholarship what fatwa to give. Whereas in the Shi'i world, in the Shi'i perspective, it is the Shia scholars that influence the government leaders and they tell them what they must do and what they cannot do. This is a reality that we see repeats itself, and we saw it in the 1920 revolution, and we keep seeing it in Shi'i history until in the modern contemporary history that we see.